Hey guys, today I'm going to be breaking down the real reason that you're burnt out and exhausted, and it's not what you think. So, if you are new around here, my name is Jen Costanza. I am a holistic burnout recovery coach for high achieving professional women leaders who want to reach that next level of success in their career, but without the burnout and without sacrificing their health and their happiness in the process. And today I'm going to be sharing with you what is one of the most important, possibly the most important tools or strategies that I use with my clients to help them achieve that success without burnout. So let's get into it. And if you're over here on Instagram and you're joining me live, hello, nice to see you. So, reasons that you think that you're exhausted and burnout. These are some of the most common reasons that might come to your mind. So, you're working too much. Very, very common. I hear this all the time. No time. I don't have enough time to do what I want, get what I want done in the day, and then I'm exhausted. Or, kind of similar to this, I'm feeling I've got too many demands, too many people demanding things of me, asking things of me, and I'm just spent. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Now, these are all completely important and valid reasons, things to look into to explain how we get to the point of complete depletion, complete exhaustion, complete burnout. But here's the kicker, there is a thread that's linking them all together, and that thread is a dysregulated nervous system. Now, what I feel like we've gotten to the point where, nervous system regulation, nervous system dysregulation, this whole idea of having a regulated or dysregulated nervous system, these have become really common, like buzzwords lately, especially on social media. So I'm going to try to break this down into its most simple parts for you today. So, what are we talking about when we're saying that your nervous system is dysregulated? Essentially, we're saying that you are unable to handle the stressors in your life effectively, and it's put you into kind of a constant state of fight, flight, freeze, where your stress response is turned on. That's another way of talking about it. And it gets you into this pattern where you're constantly reacting to every little stressor in your life. And when I say every little stressor, I think it's important to recognize that what feels stressful or what is considered, a stressor or something that would get you, quote, stressed out to one person could be totally different from another person. I was talking about this with a client recently where she said something to the effect of, I feel like I'm getting stressed out by things that that aren't really stressful and that shouldn't be stressing me out. You know, she was comparing like little things going on at work, with like a hurricane or a tornado coming at her house where her actual life might be threatened. And I said to her the same thing that I'm basically saying to you is, what's stressful, there's really no right or wrong here. What feels stressful to one person, even at one time in their life, might not feel stressful to that other person or to the same person at some other time in their life. But when we are in a dysregulated state, when our nervous system is just constantly firing, then we can get to that point where we're just constantly feeling everything is bugging us, everything is setting us off and just adding to our plate. And this is essentially what most women who are in that state of burnout, they get to this point where everything just feels like too much, right? Even things that logically, for many of us, we might think, oh, that shouldn't be stressful to me. You get home and your kid wants some attention, wants you to play with them. I should want to do that, and it can even kind of make you feel guilty that you're not able to, or even you don't, it's not that you're not able to, but you don't feel that desire to want to spend time with your friends, want to play with your kids, want to, converse with your partner. You just need to completely shut off. So if you're in that state of what I would consider burnout, essentially, you're in a dysregulated state. And if we want to truly heal and get out of that and, get back your energy, get back your spark, your motivation, your drive, your fulfillment with your life, then you need to learn to regulate your nervous system. So, I'm going to try to explain to you a bit about, and I think it's another person. Hello, Salty Runner. I can't reach my phone. It's behind my computer here, but I see you guys. Thanks so much for joining. And I hope that this is helpful. I'm getting into, I know some of you have asked me to talk more about, well, what is nervous system regulation? What does that even mean? So I'm getting into that. And so, yeah, so let's get into that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just really basically, what is your nervous system? What does that even mean? What does it do? So your nervous system is there to basically, it has a number of different functions in your body. But the one that we're going to talk about today is how it protects you from danger, and how it is related to your stress response. So your brain is constantly scanning your environment for threats to your safety. And when it identifies a potential threat to your safety, to your life, essentially, I'm going to boil this down to the very basics here. There's a lot of little moving parts in here that I'm not really going to get into, but bottom line is that when your brain, and this is a subconscious thing that is constantly happening in the background, it's not something that you are consciously in your thinking mind kind of going around, danger, danger. You're not looking for danger. This is something that happens automatic, and it's part of what keeps us alive, what kept our, ancestors alive and free from danger, is that part of our brain is instinctively constantly scanning our environment, what's around us, for signs of danger. And when it identifies something that might be dangerous, it might be a sign of danger, it communicates to our nervous system, okay, time to get into full gear and protect ourselves. And our stress response is turned on. This is also called turning on the sympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic branch of our nervous system, or otherwise known as the fight, flight, freeze response, right? And here's the thing is that when we get into a pattern where, and this is common for a lot of people, and not just those who are in, this state of exhaustion and burnout, but it's similar for many of us. We live really stressful lives, let's be honest. There are a lot of things going on that are out of our control, in our environment, in our world, in our country right now, and that can feel really stressful. So here's the thing, when our nervous system can't tell the difference between an actual threat to our life, like a lion coming at us, compared to something that is not actually life-threatening, like and getting an email from your boss. That's a really common example that you might have heard of, like this difference between, am I getting attacked by a bear or am I just getting an email? So this is where the problem comes in, is that we are constantly responding, our nervous system, our stress response is constantly being triggered by so many things in our environment every day. And this is this is really tiring on our bodies. It's really tiring, not just on the nervous system, but on your bodies as well, because every time that your stress response is activated, a lot of things are going on inside, having to do with your blood pressure, with hormones. It's a lot of wear and tear on the body to be in a constant state of stress. And if this is you, if you can resonate with this and you have been in a constant state of stress lately, whether it's because of work pressures, or relationship pressures, or anything, if experienced a great loss, then you know what I'm talking about. It wears you down physically. So our goal is ultimately, when we say nervous system regulation, our goal isn't to be in a state of calm all the time, right? And it really wouldn't make sense. We don't want to be in a state of absolute calm all the time. I'll give you one example. When you're going to exercise, when you're going to do aerobic exercise, or even when you're going to be weightlifting, for instance, it doesn't make sense to be in a state of complete calm, or what we would call the rest and digest state of the nervous system when your stress response isn't turned on. You actually need your stress response to turn on. You need some energy to get that work done. Sometimes, before you're going to give a big presentation, for instance, or like a talk, some kind of public speaking thing, you might need actually that extra jolt of energy to be able to really perform well. And so in even the most basic example I can give you, just getting up in the morning. If you have heard of the hormone cortisol, cortisol is often dubbed our stress hormone because it's one of the main hormones that is released when our stress response is turned on. And the thing is, cortisol isn't inherently bad or good. It's a hormone that we need to survive. And normally it should be really high in the morning. We need it to be high so that we can have the energy to get out of bed. So essentially, when you wake up, that's a little bit of stress on your body. So we don't really want to be in this ultimate relaxed state right when we're getting up. We actually need some energy to go on with our day. So anyways, point being, the goal isn't to be in a complete state of calm, quote, stress-free all of the time, but we do want to get to a point where our stress response is turning on when we need it to and off and getting us into a relaxed, quote, rest and digest parasympathetic state when we need it to, when we want it to. We want to be able to get to the point where we're not constantly getting triggered all the time, where we can have little things happening in our lives and we have the ability to handle it, right? When we open up our laptop and we're looking at our email and we see something that, is a demand on our time, a demand on our energy, whatever, where we can look at that email and we can say, all right, and we can feel neutral about it. We can just say, I'm going to handle this. We want to get to the point where where things are happening in our lives, and instead of immediately reacting, we are pausing and then responding intentionally. So, and that is in my mind, and I hope that this is making sense to you guys, in my mind, this is what nervous system, or a regulated nervous system, or nervous system regulation is. That's what it really is to be more aware of our emotional state, to be in and to have more control over it. So, yeah. Let me know how this is landing with you guys and if you have any questions so far. Because the next thing I'm going to get into is just a few ways that we do this work. And before I get into, I have like 4 things that I'm going to suggest to you. But I do want to say that when it comes to, shifting from that space of constantly reacting to a point where you're responding, when it comes to shifting from constantly being on to being, feeling more in control, I don't feel that there is any one right way to go about this work. And honestly, I would caution you from listening to anyone who says that there's only one right way. There's a lot of ways that we can train our nervous system to not get triggered at the little things in life. And you kind of, and this is what I do with my clients, you kind of have to do a little bit of experimental work. Some things that I'm going to talk about today might be, they might feel easy to you and some might feel more difficult. It really depends. And you have to, part of the work is learning what works for you and just developing that sense of self-awareness and being willing to step outside of your comfort zone and just experiment a little. So, sorry, my glasses are this is just a constant battle with me. I don't know if you wear glasses, if this happens to you. I feel like just from wearing them on my face, they're just constantly getting foggy and I can't see anything. So, pardon me while I wipe down my glasses for a second. If only I could go back 3 years to when I was not wearing glasses. I would love that. Okay. So the first thing that I think is really important for anybody to learn is basically you want to learn to identify for yourself the signs of when you're going into fight or flight. A lot of us are, especially when we get to the point of burnout, we've gotten to the point in our lives where we are really disconnected. Oh, I saw you wrote haha yup, and I'm not sure what that was in reference to. I'm sorry. I can't see the bottom of my iPhone screen. Sorry. I'm guessing it was maybe in regard to there not being any one right way. So, anyways, the first thing that we really need to do is get back in touch with our actual body. Now, I can tell you, glasses. I know. Glasses are the worst. I'm just waiting for my eyesight to get bad enough so that I can finally get contacts, but we're not there yet, which I think I should be happy about, right? I only wear these for reading and seeing up close more. Anyways, so when we get to most people, when they're getting to the point of burnout or when you're constantly getting stressed out and like triggered by so much going on, we've gotten to the point where we're very disconnected from our body, where our mind is just disconnected from what is going on physically, physiologically in our body. I'll tell you one thing that I used to experience when I would say, in that period of my life where I might not have called it burnout. I will label it that now, kind of in retrospect, looking back at what was going on. But, I was at a point where I constantly felt out of breath. Like I frequently felt like I wasn't getting enough oxygen into my lungs. Like almost like I was suffocating. I didn't realize that because I was always so stressed out, I'd gotten into the habit of breathing very, very shallowly. Like breathing, and when I say shallow, I mean if we were to take a really deep breath right now, ideally your belly should be kind of poofing out a bit. And then going back in when you exhale. If that's not happening even a little bit, chances are that you've gotten into the practice of breathing into your chest, into the top areas of your lungs. And when we do that, essentially, this is something that happens when we're stressed out a lot. It makes stress worse. It makes stress and anxiety even worse. So it kind of has that double whammy there. But I didn't even realize I was doing it. And later on, I did kind of identify that this is something that I do. No wonder I have so much anxiety. 1 a.m. where you are. Oh my goodness. Where are you? That's like the other side of the world. So one of the things that I like to I like to work on with clients, and that I recommend that you guys do as well, is learning to identify the signs in your body of when you're going into fight or flight. And, just developing that familiarity with your body, and just reconnecting your mind to your body. And just, it's not about, it's not about judgment. It's not about changing anything, but simply about noticing and developing this awareness of, oh, this is what happens when I'm stressed out. I get this feeling in my stomach, or when I am triggered, I get, my throat is closing up, or I notice I feel hot, or, I develop a instantaneous, strange kind of headache. And this was actually, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but some of you who know me or who've been following me for a long time know that a number of years ago I had a really bad surfing accident that resulted in bad concussion. And one of the things that I learned in the process of recovering from that concussion was how my body physiologically was reacting to stress in my life. And I won't get into the details of that, but when you have a head injury, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but the kind of like the side effect of that head injury was to exacerbate all of the physical symptoms that would normally occur, or that I normally feel in my body when I was stressed out. And long story short, it turns out I was stressed out like a lot, all the time. And anyways, it's bottom line is that one of the first steps to actually dealing with your stress, to actually getting to this point where you can learn to regulate your nervous system, is knowing what it's doing in the first place. Second thing that I want to talk about is, in terms of like, how do we learn to regulate our nervous system, is that we can use tactics. I don't know if I want to call it strategies or tactics. I'm going to call it tactics or tools. We can use tools to get ourselves out of fight or flight in the moment. So for instance, a very popular one for this, and one that I love to share with people, is just simple breath work, like box breathing. I've talked about that so many times on here. Box breathing. It doesn't have to be box breathing. Any kind of breathing where you're breathing deep into your belly and you're elongating your exhales. That is a type of breath work, or that is a tool. Our breath is essentially the tool. And when we elongate the exhale of our breath, we send a message to our nervous system that we are safe. And it helps us immediately get into a more calm state. So, for instance, let's say, something that one of my clients is doing right now is, before opening her laptop at the beginning of the day to start on a particular project that might feel stressful, she sits down, closes her eyes, and does a few rounds of box breathing to get herself into a more calm state. And that's just one example. There's a lot of other kind of strategies that we can use to get out of a state of fight or flight. And basically, they're all aiming to do the same thing: is send a signal to your nervous system that you are safe, so that you're basically retraining your nervous system to view the thing that you're doing in that moment as safe, instead of something that you need to be constantly reacting to. And yeah, I hope that this is landing. I hope that this makes sense the way that I'm explaining it. And if it doesn't, drop in a comment, and I'll try again. And kind of at the same thing, I haven't talked about this too much, but there's also tactics that we can use to get ourselves moving when we're in a freeze state. So example of a freeze state. So we know that some of us, when we are under a lot of pressure, when we're under a lot of stress, instead of feeling, on the one hand, we could feel frazzled, like we're on edge, we're like going all over the place. But kind of the opposite of that is just going into like a coma, sitting back on the couch, doing nothing, wanting to scroll, for instance, or just overall the term, procrastination. Who's familiar with that? Me. Some of us, our kind of go-to stress response might be getting into that freeze state where we just kind of feel like we can't move. And you might have experienced both of these kinds of things, like on the one hand, or sometimes you feel like on edge. And maybe, and this is something that might happen, is that if you have been feeling like on edge and stressed out for so long, or so frequently and for so long, it might get to the point where you're so exhausted of being constantly stressed out that you go into this kind of more freeze state where you just kind of feel numb. So there are also strategies that we can use to try to get out of that freeze state. And those would be strategies where we are moving our body gently, basically to getting the blood moving, getting our bodies moving to be able to get out of that. So bottom line, there are tactics or tools that we can use to get out of fight or flight in the moment. And also there's some tools that we can use to get out of freeze state. A third thing that I want to mention, and this is kind of related to the last one, but I would say there are tools or strategies that we can use to give our nervous system signs of safety on a daily basis. And this is more where the idea of routines come into play. So I'll give an example, and this is another example of breath work because that's essentially my go-to tool for nervous system regulation, and it's been really transformational for me, and I love talking about it and sharing about it. But something that I have adopted is a daily morning breathwork practice. I basically embed this into my morning routine, and it helps to kind of ground me in who I am and what I want to do for the day, and it helps to put me in a good mood. And that's just one example of, I think some people maybe might be more into meditation. You can also, this is kind of, I guess I could also put into this category of nervous system, daily routines. You could also, talk about yoga here. I don't know if Frazzled Yogi is still here on Instagram, but yoga could go into this category, just a daily yoga practice, a daily walk. These are all a daily walk, maybe without electronics. These are all really great kind of routines or habits that you can build to get into that, to basically be constantly giving your nervous system a feeling of safety. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about today is, it's actually a new thing for me to be talking about this. It's a new skill that I recently learned and that I'm going to be using with clients. This is actually another type of breath work that I'm going to talk about. But the bottom line behind this type of breath work, somatic breath work, is, letting go of stress that's built up in our body. So over time, stress accumulates in our body. If you've ever heard that phrase, what is the phrase? Sorry, I'm totally blanking out in the moment. I'm trying to find the book. Who has heard this phrase, the body keeps a score? If you've ever heard that. The idea behind that is that, or part of the idea behind that is that when we go through When we have a stressful experience, and especially a traumatic experience, oftentimes, and if you've experienced any kind of trauma or PTSD, you'll be familiar with this, that there are things that your body, you might have forgotten it. Rationally, you know that that this is not happening anymore, that stressful thing is over. But your body doesn't forget. Your body remembers. Your lizard brain that's constantly looking out for danger, it remembers. And so the question is that how do we let go of the stress that we're holding inside our body, that maybe in the past that we never allowed ourselves to fully experience or express? How do we get rid of it? One of the big ways that we can get rid of that is a skill that I have learned recently is somatic breath work. And there may be other ways of getting that stress built up in the body out, so that it's not, essentially, when we're carrying all this old stress in our body, it shows up in our life in the form of things like, I hate this term, but like limiting beliefs or feeling like everything has to be perfect. If you deal with perfectionism or people pleasing, these are often ways that we have learned to cope and stay safe. And we might know rationally that it doesn't make sense anymore to keep doing these things, but it's hard to kind of get over it. So one of the ways that we start to get over this stuff, these patterns that we keep kind of repeating, is finding a way to let go of the stress that's stuck in your body. And one of the ways that we can let go of that is with somatic breath work. And just really quickly, in somatic breath work, this is a practice not done every day, maybe like once or twice a month, kind of at most, where we self-induce a fight or flight state with our breath. We literally use our breath to get our nervous system into a fight flight state. And then we also use our breath to get ourselves out of that state. And that's kind of cool when you think about it, because you're basically showing yourself, hey, I actually have this powerful ability to control my nervous system state just with my breath. I can choose to go into fight or flight. I can choose to go into this restful, calm, rest and digest state. So those are 4 ways that we can learn to regulate our nervous system. Learning to identify the ways that your body goes into fight or flight, learning to reconnect with your body, tactics or tools to get yourself out of fight or flight or to get out of a freeze state, tactics to teach our body, give our nervous system a feeling of safety on a daily basis, and occasional tactics or strategies to let go of stress that is stuck in our body. And what I would say about all of this is that ultimately, this work is really necessary if we want to be able to sustainably make changes in our habits and in our life that are the changes that we know we need to make, or the habits that we know we need to adopt if we want to feel energized and healthy and happy and restore our capacity to get stuff done and reach that next level of success in our life or in our work. If we want to, in order to make these changes that we know we need to make, and to make them sustainably, we need to do this nervous system work. So changes like that might relate to foundational self-care, like with our diet, with our sleep routines, changes in terms of, setting boundaries. This is so challenging for everybody, setting boundaries, especially if you're not used to. It can feel really jarring and scary And, just the act of saying no and whatever that looks like can be really scary, and it can put you into a fight or flight state. So we need to be doing this nervous system work in order to get ourselves to kind of get out of our comfort zone and make these changes. And even to be able to make bigger decisions about work or about our life. We need to be able to, I believe, we need to be able to make those decisions from a place of calm, where we're not reacting to every stimuli, but where we're really like able to think clearly and calmly. All those things are necessary. And, when we don't work to teach our nervous system that it's safe to have these boundaries, to hold down these healthier habits, then honestly, we risk falling back into our old patterns that give us that feeling of safety. And those old patterns often revolve around things like perfectionism, people pleasing, good girling, overdoing. There's a word that I'm totally blanking on the word for this, but the tendency to just always have to be doing something and adding to our to-do list, overachieving in general. These are all habits that have made us feel safe for many people. Maybe one, maybe many of these. I'm probably missing a few there. Maybe they made us feel safe up to a certain, at some point in our life, but they don't serve us anymore. And they're really hard to overcome, because we need to teach our nervous system that it's actually safe to not do those things and to stand up for ourselves instead. So I hope that this is landing. And I know that there's still one, maybe two of you still on here. And I've kind of reached the end of what I wanted to talk about today. And I really hope that this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, right in this minute, and you're on Instagram, you can pop them in the chat. And if something comes up afterwards, just shoot me a DM, or once I post this replay, or if I'm also recording this on YouTube to post on YouTube. If you're on YouTube and anything comes up, post a comment, and I promise you I will respond to all of them. I think this is really important, just kind of demystifying what nervous system regulation in broad strokes kind of means. And I think it's also really important to know and to believe that even if you're in this point of complete burnout, or have been struggling for a long time with stress, which I can 100% relate to. That was me. It might just be that you haven't found the right strategy to get out of it. And I guess one last thing I'm going to say about this is that it is really hard to do this work alone. And I think it's really important to have a support system. I've had many forms of support over the years to be able to get to a point of where I'm not always so stressed out and just constantly living on the edge. And if you would like to have, or you're curious about how I can support you with this work, then just shoot me a DM, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll post my my email and my link to have a chat in the description, and we can talk. So that is all for today. I hope that you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.